Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Heels and a Face Wrestling Podcast. This audio and interview was recorded for Diva-Dirt.com and the Diva-Dirt.com audience. On this episode, I am going to interview Kelly Klein. Kelly Klein is currently working for Ring of Honor and is currently participating in their Women of Honor Championship Tournament. There are a few things that I wanted to go over before you hear the interview. This took place over a week ago, so any parts of the interview that were already outdated, I just cut out those parts. I wanted to say that I really enjoy talking to Kelly Klein, and she gave me a lot more time than any other interviews that Two Heels and a Face has done for Diva-Dirt.com, which is fantastic. You'll hear me ask a question to Kelly, and the reason why I asked this question was because I asked it to Deonna Purrazzo when Chris and I interviewed Deonna, and I felt like it was a very good question to ask because Deonna Purrazzo is still in her 20s and has accomplished so much. I felt the same way about Kelly Klein. I checked inaccurate sources, and her age was not Kelly Klein's age was not on her Wikipedia page. So I checked a couple inaccurate sources, which I won't name, and they said that Kelly Klein was actually 27 years old. I come to find out during the interview, and I left this audio in here because I felt like it was still a really powerful message that Kelly said. But I come to find out during the interview that Kelly Klein is not 27, and it really doesn't matter what her age is. The reason why I asked that question, though, is because I felt like she accomplished so much and only being 27, and I kind of wanted to ask the same question that I asked Deonna Purrazzo and whatever. But Kelly Klein really turns the inaccurate question into something special, and I'm a huge believer in age just being a number and it not really mattering how old you are. You could be 27, 32, 54, 63, and you can still accomplish things and you can still achieve goals, and age is really just a number. So she responds very well to this question, although it wasn't accurate, and she turns it into a really positive spin, and I just wanted to thank her for doing that. So there's a question in here. You'll just have to look forward to that or expect that. Kelly Klein's first round match in the Women of Honor tournament has already taken place. I wrote an article for that on Diva-Dirt.com. If you just search for Women of Honor, or it might still be somewhere on the homepage, or check their Twitter feed at Diva-Dirt, and you'll be able to find an article I wrote that just summarized all of the first round matches that I saw, or at least the ones that had taken place. Deonna Purrazzo's matches on there, Kelly Klein's matches on there, Madison Rayne's matches on there, Brandy Rhodes has a match, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the match that already taken place, and it was a very good match that Kelly had. And in summary, in conclusion, this interview was just a really great time. Kelly Klein was really fun to talk to. She gave me plenty of time. She gave you, the listeners, and the Diva-Dirt.com audience plenty of her time. And she has a very good head on her shoulders. She's very emotionally intelligent. She has the right mindset for a wrestler. She's doing great things, and she's really confident in herself. And everyone should be a lot more like Kelly Klein. So without further ado, here's the interview. I am on the line with Kelly Klein. Kelly, thanks for joining us today, and how are you? How's your day going?
I'm doing great. Day's going well. I've been preparing for a trip I've got this weekend for some seminars and some events, so just keeping busy doing that. So,
Kelly, you're known as the Gatekeeper, and I wanted to know, I feel like that stuck out to me just kind of when I was looking at a lot of your most recent matches and watching your product. And the Gatekeeper stuck out to me because I feel like that's a very unique nickname. It's a term that is potentially used and kind of in the wrestling lingo for other things. But I wanted to ask you where you received that nickname, or how that came about, and kind of what that nickname means to you.
I just kind of came up with it because I started to just see myself as a person that, people had to sort of go through to be part of Women of Honor. And I was, and still am, a litmus test. So that's why I started using that. And people have commented on my posture when I stand in the ring with my arms crossed, kind of like I'm guarding something, which I am. I think that is important to, have that kind of attitude, and I'm very protective of what I have and what we all have as a unit. So, and that's with Women of Honor, and that's with wrestling in general.
Right. And that's good. I think that's a good transition kind of into your character. So your character stuck out to me as an intimidating character, which I liked, and you definitely have your own swagger out there. Utilizing the mouth guard in different ways also kind of adds to that intimidating factor. And you seem to me, this is based on fan perspective, as kind of a bruiser out there. How would you define your character or persona in the ring? Would the bruiser be accurate, or is there a more accurate description that you can give us?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just about competition, and for different people, that's going to take different forms. For me, it's about being intensely physical and hard hitting. It comes across a lot in a lot of my striking, and that just aggressive intensity.
Great. And in talking about your career, it's interesting because I feel that like you debuted in 2006, but a lot of your stuff has happened with Ring of Honor in 2015. So it's kind of neat. You have, I'd say, a little bit more experience than someone would think, but yet you're only at the age of 27, if I'm correct. So I feel like what would you accredit to like your success thus far in your career, accomplishing so much and only being 27 years old?
Well, I'm actually not 27 years old.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's sort of a rumor, I guess, that's been going around on the internet for a long time.
Oh,
and
okay.
I think it appeared in one place, and then other places, cited and repeated that, and then next thing you know, somebody can go and say, oh, it's in all these sources, but it really stemmed from one place. And
okay.
So when I was kind of early in my first couple of years of wrestling, I got really tired of trying to fight people off, basically other people on the events who would try to pressure me into going out after the shows. So
okay.
I started saying I wasn't old enough to get into bars. Of course, some of these wonderful individuals said, that's okay, we can get you in anyway. But that kind of goes to a totally different topic, the fact that me just saying no, I have to drive home wasn't sufficient, and that it got to that point.
Yeah.
But I just turned 32, and I started wrestling. I started training right before I turned 20, so 1920.
Okay.
And I think that's also something that's really important to talk about, because
right.
when I started wrestling, it was very commonly accepted that women had to basically have their career by the time they were 30. And if they didn't, that it was too late. They missed their window. Okay. And I think that was something that for a while kind of people thought that in general. I heard men, think that too for them. But in particular for women, it was even now, I think, still people sort of have that idea. And I bought into it for a long time too. And when I, partway, a few years into my career, I was putting that pressure on myself, really thinking that, this window's closing. And when I realized that the age itself didn't dictate your skill or your capabilities or your physicality or any of your abilities. Once I realized that for myself, I think that made a big difference for me, and I stopped getting in my own way.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic that you realize that. And I think also the term of kind of making it too, like you said that there was that perception that by 30 you would have to have made it. I think that term "made it," if I'm using like my hands as quotation marks, has changed as well. Just because I feel like there's not only one place to go now well, success is whatever you determine it as, but there's not only one kind of mecca that you have to go now to be like seen as a successful wrestler. There is a lot more options because the overall depth of wrestling has increased, kind of underneath, the so-called number one company. So I think that just the wrestling is stronger as a whole, and you don't have to necessarily follow that same path that someone expects you to, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think that success is different for every person too. And at different times in my life, I would have described success in different ways. But as my life has changed and my circumstances and experiences have changed, then the definition of success also changes. So,
right.
Even some of my contemporaries who are in different parts of their lives and are in different scenarios, success and what's going to be right for them is going to be completely different than what it is for me. And it doesn't mean that I'm right or they're right or that anybody's wrong. It's just
exactly
everybody has to figure out what's right for them.
Exactly. That's great. It sounds like that's taken some time to figure out, but it's great that you've kind of come to that sense of, and that strong-willed emotional intelligence that it sounds like you have and have figured that out about life. Cause, it's something that some people will never figure out, but it's great that you have. So in talking about, upcoming events and potential, future successes, we can shift into the Women of Honor tournament and your opponent. So you've been announced the first round match, and your opponent is Bonesaw Brooks, I believe. And I wanted to just get your feelings regarding the actual tournament itself. I guess kind of maybe emotions that came over you when you were first announced that, or it was first announced that it was happening, and kind of your feelings toward this particular opponent. And
well, the fact that the tournament was announced, I think was huge for not only for the wrestlers, but for the fans as well, because it marks a really significant milestone in Ring of Honor and Women of Honor. And it shows that there's a commitment to what we're doing and what we want to accomplish. Whereas when it's a match here and a match there, the way it started, 2.5 years ago, there was that feeling of instability, but now, there's more of a feeling of commitment, I think from some aspects. And I think that's something that the fans really needed, because even though, I knew, it's kind of what the feelings were about Women of Honor and about women's wrestling, as far as the people kind of behind the scenes. I knew what they were doing, that they were working towards it, and that we were all working on building something. The fans could only really see what they could see. Right. So this is something that just really, I think, solidifies for them that this is something that they can kind of dig into and not be worried that it's just going to disappear, or that they're going to get invested and it's not going to go anywhere, or it's going to go away. That's not the case. And it also, I think, answers the work that those of us who have been there since the beginning have put into it, and it's really validating for what we've been doing, and that we've been just continuing to drive forward and continuing to make progress.
That's great. And then your first round matchup against Bonesaw Brooks, how do you feel about being placed against her?
I think that was an awesome decision, because she and I probably are two of the most similar competitors on the roster.
Okay.
And, to me, it's really interesting facing somebody who is so similar. We have nearly identical move sets. We both sort of have that same really no nonsense, aggressive, intense approach. So that just creates a totally different dynamic than I would have with any other competitor. And it's also a first time singles matchup, cause she and I have never faced each other in a singles competition before. So, I feel like they've been really doing a great job, putting together the brackets in a way that we will get to see a lot of first time matchups, as well as, even potentially some matchups that people have seen before, but they want to see more of.
Great. Yeah. That adds another level of excitement. First of all, putting two people together, and it sounds like based on, I know in your style and based on what you said about her style, there's probably going to be a lot of knees thrown in this match. It sounds, so there's that excitement factor there, but then also a first time matchup also adds to another layer of excitement. So, that's
and
great.
with her,
and
it's cool
smart for them
because it's the first time matchup where on one hand, you kind of don't know what's going to happen. But on the other hand, it's like, for I think both of us, it's like facing ourselves in a way. So, it's like, okay, we know maybe what to expect from the other person, but then who's going to be one step ahead of who? It's really, I think, a very interesting kind of scenario.
I wanted to shift into, first, before we go overseas, I wanted to, since we talked about the tournament, right, and that's a great display. It will be a great display of women's professional wrestling. I wanted to see if there's anything on the kind of the top of your head, because I know the conversation has kind of shifted to, hey, we need more women's wrestling, and now we're getting it. And now, like, it's just about kind of like layering in everywhere. This is not just in Women of Honor, but everywhere. It's kind of about upping the ante, layering in different aspects. You're having first time ever matches. You're just having more time for women to wrestle. I wanted to know if there was anything off the top of your head that could kind of take it to that next level. Like, we're climbing that mountain right now to just a really, really great women's professional wrestling experience everywhere. Is there anything that you feel could also be done? And I know these things take time, but maybe potentially in this year that hasn't been done yet that you think would be great for just women's professional wrestling as a whole?
Well, something that is happening, and it's kind of a chicken or the egg scenario. It's very cyclical because as women's wrestling has started to gain more prominence and more respect, I feel that more women have started training to become professional wrestlers. And I think that's because they now see a place for themselves where before they didn't, or maybe they didn't see a place that was what they were wanting to do. So now we have all these young women who can look and see that, hey, if I work really hard, I can actually compete and I can show what I'm capable of. And, before it was, when I was growing up, it was looking at the Attitude Era and, okay, if I work really hard, then Vince McMahon can treat me like a dog.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I think a lot of people wanted to do. I know that my mom, had a negative kind of image of women's wrestling because of things like that. But those are the women that really, put up with that shit. I guess you can beep that out, but to make it possible for us to do what we're doing now, just my I guess assumption, they said, okay, you know what, we'll do this because then we can go and, at least show what we can do with the couple of minutes we get, and then maybe get more little by little. And I think that's what they did, and I'm sure they had, fun, like doing the pillow fights and, goofing around and stuff like that. But I don't think that it's what anybody signs up for wrestling training school to do. So
Absolutely.
now they're seeing something where, if I train to wrestle, I will get to wrestle. That gives us a much bigger pool of talent. That makes it more competitive. So that makes the talent pool elevated.
Right.
So now I think we're in that place where it's just this influx of women that are training. You've got training schools and training classes that are all women. You've got companies that are running all women's shows, and then you've got companies that are all women's companies and things like that they're awesome. And I think that stuff is just going to keep going. And then now I think it's time for, which this is happening, but I want to see more of it and teaching and doing the seminars. And that's the kind of thing that now I want to do. And I see some of the other women doing this where, we can turn around and try to teach the newer up and coming women, what we've been through and what they can expect and how they can navigate, this landscape as a woman, because, there's only so much that the men can teach the women as far as that goes, because they don't experience it the way we do. So they can, teach you a lot, but they can't teach you things that they just don't know or that they just haven't experienced.
That's true. And so speaking of some of your experiences, but I wanted to just hear about, I recently had a friend who went to Japan and did, this is around Wrestle Kingdom, and he did, I believe, 7 shows in 9 days, and one of them was Stardom. I'm not sure if you were over there during that time, but I wanted to just know about your Stardom experience and working in Japan and just how all of that was.
Yeah, that Wrestle Kingdom and all that was actually just a couple weeks after I came home. Okay. But Stardom was amazing. It was so much fun because for me it was just exactly what I want to do with wrestling, was training and working out and wrestling on events, and that was my job, So
right.
that was kind of the just living the dream there, where it's like, okay, you're able to, and like we were talking about before, where there are different measures of success, and for me, right. I was like, okay, I'm able to, survive while just doing what I love to do and being able to get better at what I love to do. And, I always want to learn and I always want to grow and evolve and improve. And I had the opportunity to do that, especially being with a completely different pool of talent that I had never crossed paths with before. So there were just different perspectives and backgrounds and things that I could draw from, and different dynamics working with these different people that could challenge me in a new way.
Great. And one thing I've always kind of wondered, and so you say, when you talk about different dynamics of working with different people, because there is, and I'm sure that some of the wrestlers over there have or know a little bit of English, but is there any things you would do to try to like kind of help match coordination when you're working with someone who speaks a different language? Like, to me as a fan, that seems like a very difficult thing. But are they just so good over there that after, a couple times of running through things, they can pick it up and kind of pick up on cues or signals or anything like that? Or how did you kind of overcome that obstacle? Or is it not even really an obstacle?
Well, as you may have heard before, I think they say about 80% to 90% of communication is nonverbal. So you have to keep that in mind too, that, when we're all dealing with wrestling and reading body language, that, there's a lot that you can, communicate. And even when I'm working with English speakers, there's a lot that we communicate non-verbally.
Okay.
If I've got a tag partner, and there have been many times where we kind of like look at each other and I set up for something and they know where I'm going. So they
right.
either join me or, get it, kind of integrate themselves into whatever it is. And a lot of the wrestling terminology is the same, where there were a lot of the wrestling moves. They use the same terms that we would.
Right.
And then, of course, we at this time are very lucky that we have the technology that we have, because we're able to use Google Translate and different things like that.
Yeah, great
to help
point.
communicate. That came in really handy. This was kind of an interesting experience. There was a night that we were going to have no training or anything, so we had a free night, and some of the girls and I were looking into going to see, there was a stage production of Aladdin. So I went to the box office. Yeah, we didn't get to go. Spoiler.
Oh.
But they sell out like crazy. So turns out we waited too long. But so I went to the box office, and I had read online that they had some English-speaking employees usually at the box office. So I went and I started talking to the lady, and she looked at me and she didn't speak any English. And I was asking, does anybody speak English? And nobody there spoke English. So I got out my cell phone, and I got my Google Translate, and I wrote my question and translated it, and I showed her. And then she got her laptop and she wrote her answer in Japanese, and then she translated it and showed me, and we went back and forth like that.
That's great.
Until we were able to kind of figure out, what we needed to figure out. It was really interesting, being able to communicate that way. But that's something that, the previous generations of wrestlers who have traveled like that did not have, that kind of benefit. But
right.
That was something just as it was happening. I was thinking, wow, how cool is this that I could go anywhere and we can find a way to communicate.
Yeah, that's a great story. It stinks that it ended with no Aladdin at the end, but hopefully you'll get to see that soon.
Yeah, it was once. It was. She said it was sold out, and I thought, okay, well maybe because sometimes in some theaters in the States, they have rush tickets where if people don't show up for will call or something, they release their tickets. So she said, no, they don't have that. And then the only tickets available were like pretty expensive. So we thought, okay, well, we'll go do something else. But there were a lot of fun things to do in Japan. So, and with our training schedule, a lot of times when we had free time, a nap was one of the best things to do.
Right. Yes, of course. Oh, forever and always. A nap is always a great choice.
I think I ended up just going to the gym, to the personal trainer. I'm pretty sure is what I ended up doing that night.
All right. So we're going to get into just a little bit about kind of a recap of 2017. Although we are kind of in the late February, I think that's still a good question to ask. And then looking forward to 2018 as well. Before we do that, I wanted to just ask a guilty pleasure question here as a fan. And at the end of the day, we're all wrestling fans. So I wanted to just ask, what kind of wrestling are you watching, or do you watch in your spare time? Because I feel like I've gotten many different answers to this question. It's always interesting to see kind of what, just not when you're watching back your matches and kind of studying, but just when you want to kind of relax and forget about life. Are you turning any wrestling to watch?
When I watch wrestling, I really like to watch wrestling probably like from the 50s and 60s in particular.
Interesting.
A lot of that. My wrestling style and kind of my wrestling interest has a lot to do with the sort of the mat wrestling and chain wrestling, and I grew up around the like high school wrestling, and so like the kind of amateur and Olympic style wrestling.
Okay.
So I really like watching that kind of style, more infused in professional wrestling. Watching the older wrestling matches, it's like you can kind of things come back around where things have kind of gone maybe out of style. And then you look back and you go, oh my gosh, that was really cool. And it's like people have kind of forgotten about some things. So I like to go back and watch and try to make old things new again.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Every now and then I'll throw something into a match that I saw, watching like Lorenzo Parenti or somebody, and it's people are always like, oh, that thing you did was really cool. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's like new and innovative. It's like, yeah, because people forgot about it. It's been 50 years and people forgot about it. So I love being able to draw from that kind of stuff. And it's like, it was good enough for them. It's good enough for me.
Right. Are you just going to YouTube for this, or is there some kind of source because that sounds like you're going very, very deep into the archives here?
I found some stuff on YouTube, and definitely having Wes Thatcher point me in the right direction has been helpful. And then Scott Teal is also a wrestling historian that's got a lot of awesome. He's got access to like books and matches and all kinds of things. So he was so kind as to set me up with a few DVDs of and old women's wrestling, which was awesome.
That's interesting. Yeah. And that's what's so cool about wrestling is if you, and this is speaking from a fan perspective once again, but if you kind of appreciate like almost the principles and the basics of it, whether you're in the ring as a wrestler or just as a fan, it kind of spans generations, and you can appreciate things that happened in the 50s or 60s, and we'll continue to appreciate things that happen in the future. Like, for example, I recently went on a YouTube deep dive with my girlfriend's father, and it was we were just watching consistently just like Mad Dog Vachon videos. I don't know how we got on that subject, but it was like a way for us to connect and like really hang out. And we just, churned out like 15 videos of his on YouTube, and like going back, and I'm able to appreciate kind of like all the things that he did. So it's kind of cool how wrestling can span generations. And if someone's doing like the basic essence and the principles of it right, and just being really entertaining, it doesn't matter when we watch it in the past or the future, it's going to be good.
Yeah. The bottom line is that we're storytellers, and it's about how you tell the story. So no matter what era you look at, the ones that really stand out are the ones that are storytellers, in my opinion. I think those are the ones that just really have that longevity.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. All right, so we're in the home stretch here. I asked this question to other people that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing for Diva-Dirt.com, and I thought it was a great question, and I wanted to ask the same to you. So if there is a word, or it can be a word or sentence or multiple sentences, but if there is a word or phrase that you can use to define your past year, the year of 2017, what would that word, phrase, or sentence be?
That's a good question, and I don't know maybe the best way to phrase it, but it's kind of, for me, breaking barriers. Like I've said to people before that, because I had in my mind sort of put that limitation on what I thought my wrestling career could be, that everything that I've been able to do, especially in this last year, is just a bonus. I mean, I had sort of written off the chance that I would ever get to go to Japan, or, be appearing on TV or be on a pay-per-view, things like that.
Right.
That I almost like made peace with, okay, well, that didn't happen. So, it's kind of, I guess, breaking that barrier and having all of those things finally happen, because I did get out of my own way, and I didn't, give up and quit, and, just kept kind of trucking along.
Yeah, that's great. Really quickly, and like bringing it full circle here, right? So we've established that you are in charge of defining your own success. So goals for 2018. What are some things you're looking forward to doing in 2018, or some things you would like to do for you to consider it to be a successful year in wrestling?
I know that it's going to be a successful year just in the fact that, this is already the year of the crowning of the first Women of Honor champion.
Right.
That I already know that, we're making so much progress and we'll continue on that this year. So just being able to be a significant part of this tournament. I would love to go back to Japan. I would love to travel to some other countries I haven't been to yet. So that's what my goal is. I really want to go to the UK. I haven't wrestled there yet. So, I think that would be traveling there and being a significant part of this tournament would be really great things for me to check off in 2018.
That's great, and that's all. That's like we said. That's all it needs to be. So if we wish you the best of luck in accomplishing those, and just keep on keeping on. And before I let you go, I want to thank you for your time, and I wanted to kind of give you the floor for any plugging of social media or any upcoming dates. Or I know you have those seminars this weekend, but if there's any other projects you're working on, you want people to go to, now's your time. You have the floor.
Thank you. All of my social media is Real Kelly Klein. So that's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find me the same way. Just type in Real Kelly Klein. I do have some things that are in the works this year. So definitely just kind of keeping an eye on those would be a good way to kind of get in on the ground floor as I launch some different things. And my email is also Real Kelly Klein for bookings. So Real Kelly Klein at AOL if people wanted to bring me in for an appearance or to host a seminar. I love doing that stuff. I love coaching and teaching and being a part of that. So I also really like to hear from my fans, and I would love to meet my fans. So following the social media, going to ROHWrestling.com and checking out the events, definitely making sure to get tickets ahead of time if we are in your area, because we, certain venues in particular, we have been selling out. So got to get your tickets, and then that way I can meet you.
Right. There you go. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and we appreciate you sharing your stories with us, and we wish you the best of luck in the future, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.